I don't know how to say this, but there are too many monsters! And I know what you might be thinking. How could he say that? How could he utter those words? How could he even conjure the thought? Every monster is beautiful in its own way. Yes! Even you!
You're beautiful!
And look, I agree. Do not mistake what I say, for I may have led you astray. What I mean to convey is that there's too many types of monsters, too many categories, too many divisions and subdivisions, and at a certain point, it starts to lose all meaning. Let me give you an example. Rathalos! You know him, right? Probably good friends, king of the skies, red flying wyvern, all about the fire, good at what he does, flagship of the flagship. Yes, flagship. He sells flags! Basically, he's a big deal. And there is Rathalos. Base, normal Rathalos. There's Azure Rathalos, a subspecies of Rathalos. There is Silver Rathalos, a rare species of Rathalos. There is Dreadking Rathalos, a deviant of Rathalos. There is Flame Rathalos, a special species of Rathalos. There is Apex Rathalos, a Apex Rathalos. There is a Zenith Rathalos, who is a Zenith species of Rathalos. There is a ZERUREUSU, who is a Rathalos cosplaying Blue Eyes White Dragon. And the point is, that's a lot of Rathalos, right? That's a lot of categories of monster that have a Rathalos member. And as you get more and more and more, the lines start to blur, and the coolness starts to dissipate, and the wow factor starts to dim. And like, don't get me wrong, I am always in favor of any given new monster or variation of it, or any kind of way to twist it and give us a fresh experience. Inherently, there isn't anything wrong with this, and I'd like to put a big old note now that this little talk is more than anything for a bit of fun, because it's something that struck me, and I just thought it was, what? Really? No way! When I actually counted and realized. So, you know, the types of monsters, subspecies, rare species, variants, deviants, you know how it goes. Guess how many there is if we go to the wider world of Monster Hunter. Just guess. Well, you're wrong! Unless you accidentally got it right, in which case, congratulations. The number then is 22. 22 categories of monster. 22! What? I might have even missed some, and you might be like, 22, there's not 22. Okay, alright, here we go. There is subspecies, rare species, variants, deviants, frenzied monsters, apex frenzied monsters, hyper monsters, tempered monsters, arch-tempered monsters, apex rampage version monsters. There is hardcore monsters, there is supremacy species, there is origin species, there is extreme individuals, there is burst species and zenith species, lone species, abnormal state monsters, special species, black blighted monsters, rage raid monsters, and EX monsters. Oh, did you get all that? I don't blame you if you didn't. So what I'm gonna do today is, well, we're gonna collapse these categories. We're going to make it simple again. We're going to make it easy. So I would like to posit to you that there need only be truly 3 categories of monsters. A base normal monsters, you know, the species, just normal, alright? We'll call it normal, you know, base Rathalos, alright? Cool. Subspecies, okay, a regional variant. We know how the subspecies work. They are, well documented. The African elephant to the Indian elephant of the Monster Hunter world. Cool. And then finally, variants, which are indeed a unique member of a certain species, and what makes them unique? Well, that reason can be kind of anything. Let's have a little focused look before we begin then on variants themselves. They tend to be rare individuals, or a like anomaly group, of a given species of monsters, they tend to be quite similar to the base monster, but they have a few unique traits, or a lot of unique traits, that set them apart. A lot of the time they tend to be more powerful, and they tend to mess around with elements and statuses and such. Basically, it's weirdo version of base monster, and how that has come to be, well, could be many, many different methods. So this is what I'm going to say are our three overarching, you know, master categories that can't really go into one another, because a subspecies is certainly not a variant is certainly not a base monster is certainly not a subspecies, so on and so forth. So let's do this thing and go down the list. Let's begin then with rare species. Rare species are just literally rare subspecies. Generally tend to be more powerful, but the only real quantifier is rarity, so they are quite literally just subspecies, so they go into subspecies. Deviants up next then, and they are a changed individual in a species, a lot of the time from a hunter encounter, but not necessarily, and whatever has happened to them, they have changed uniquely from their peers, and the key difference between a deviant and a variant is that a deviant isn't necessarily recreatable. It's more a unique freak event that has created a unique freak monster, and well, it tends to be quite powerful. However, a rare unique individual quite literally falls into the variant playbook, and therefore all deviants are indeed variants. Then we have a frenzied monster, and frenzied, obviously, just a temporarily altered state by the frenzy virus, making them aggressive, bit more powerful. Yeah, they're a variant while they're infected with the frenzy, and then they return to just being normal monster. That one is easy. Then the apex state, while from frenzy virus, when they've mastered it and become super powerful, RAJANG being notorious, yeah, also just variant, same rules, and even more permanent now that they have, well, become permanently an apex monster. Then we have Tempered from World and Iceborne, and this is a veteran, battle-hardened member of a species. This one is interesting. Technically, they're just old monsters that have been living a long time, and they have absorbed a bit of bioenergy from elder dragons. If it wasn't for the bioenergy part, if it was just old, you know, experienced member of species, they wouldn't even be a category. They'd just be a base monster, just old. It's not like you transitioning into an entirely different entity by aging. You're still, you know, you. In any case, the bioenergy absorbing part, of course, makes them variant-y, as that is just an influence of the new world. Arch-tempered, well, more of the same, and that's an easy one to collapse down into variants. We're doing pretty well. Let's continue. The Apex Monsters Rampage Edition. Well, these are monsters that survived an encounter with Nawa and Ibushi, gone a little bit crazy, got a little bit more powerful, and generally are ready to tear things up as they command the Horde. Yeah, they are very much into the variant category. Then we start to get a little bit more, perhaps, complicated. Let's have a look at hardcore monsters. This is a frontier thing, and basically they are just difficulty sliders, you know? They just gain a few moves, they look a bit different, they're a bit more powerful, and they're there as a challenge. And yeah, as everything I've just described, that makes them a variant. So, next up is Supremacy species. These are, again, frontier versions of monsters that are more powerful. They are quite literally old veterans of a given species, and as such are much, much more ferocious. Imagine the difference between an average human and a trained fighter. Both are still just humans, but one is much deadlier. That's kind of the Supremacy analog here. And the thing is, because they're just old, they're just experienced, they're not enhanced, they're not different in any way, they're not weird, they're not changed, they've not had like a fateful event. They actually are just normal base monsters. They're not even a category, technically speaking. They just collapse into the base monster because they're just old, experienced base monsters. There's nothing quirky or special going on. Then we have Origin species. And this is an interesting one. This is also a frontier one, and these are monsters that are exhibiting characteristics from their ancestors. They exist as they did in ancient times. They are living fossils, living relics. They keep primitive characteristics, and they may have even lived in long ago at the start of all things. This one is interesting then, because it's either a subspecies or a base monster. And of those two, I think I'm leaning towards just a base monster. If you take a given animal and then trace its evolutionary line back millions of years, you don't get a same species. You might get something unbelievably different. Think dinosaurs to birds, you know? It's not like it is just the same, so subspecies feels a bit weird, and this is all putting it very lightly and simply, as is this whole video, which again is primarily just for fun here, because there's goddamn a lot of categories, and I'm going to collapse them, even though it's incredibly useful to have subcategories so we can actually organize monsters better. But anyway, I'm going to give origin species then, and by the way, it's a very cool idea to bring back a monster as it was in ancient times and have us actually able to fight it and compare it to its modern descendant. I think that's neat, even if how that's actually happening is a bit questionable. But yes, base monsters. Then we have extreme individuals. This, again, is just a frontier category of monsters to give an incredibly powerful challenge. These are rare, powerful relatives of currently known monster species. And the cue there is relatives, which either makes them their own unique species or what they actually pretty much are subspecies. They are numerous and they are meaningfully different in a natural way. Except randomly something like Starving Devil Joe, which is a Devil Joe that is, you know, starving. A savage Devil Joe that hasn't eaten for long enough becomes a starving Devil Joe, and they're almost like got a golden shine to them, and they're incredibly powerful. That one specifically is variant territory, despite the rest of them being subspecies territory. So even within this muddle, it's kind of needs separating. But then again, there's lots of miscategorized monsters. Just look at Black Diablos, which is of course just a female Diablos in heat, which does not make it a subspecies, that makes it a variant. So why is that a thing? Well, you know, it's because all of these, it happened before all of these categories were a thing, and it's just not been recategorized since, but it damn well should be. It's on the same level as Rusted Kushala being a variant, because it's just a normal Kushala who happens to be shedding. It's a natural ebb and flow state of a monster. In any case, yes, for the most part, extreme individuals are very much just subspecies. Then there is burst species, which again are another frontier creation, and they are again just another set of powerful related monsters to an existing species. In this case, yes, they are just subspecies again, and that one is very easy to categorize. They are incredibly extreme, different, and out there subspecies, but subspecies they are. These then are members of a species with overdeveloped body parts that have grown and changed over their lifetime and given them huge advantages and power-ups and generally made them ridiculous. Now this one is interesting because it is just essentially a changed, almost mutated, but naturally so version of a base monster, which essentially just kind of makes them, yes, a base monster. If you suddenly grew a third arm, you wouldn't be a new species, you'd just be a human with a third arm, which is kind of what these guys are doing. So yeah, Zeniths are just base. Then we get to lone species. God, this is really, it's going on here. Oh my god. These are incredibly rare monsters that live a completely solitary life, and a lot of the time in a location that they usually wouldn't be found, and due to their, well, wandering nature, they tend to get a bit of a change on from their base monsters. But again, this is like a Basarios that then moves to the desert and becomes a sandstone Basarios as his rocks become desert sandy rocks. So yeah, that is subspecies territory, which indeed these ones tend to be. So that one is quite easy to nip in the bud. Special Species from Monster Hunter Explore, more powerful versions of existing monsters. This one is a little bit more on the complicated side of things because depending on the special species, it can definitely be different things. Land Conquest Lagiacrus, for example, is subspecies territory. He is a Lagiacrus from a different environment and thus has changed to accommodate it. Whereas Flame Rathalos with super fire covering him like a cloak, well, that is more variant territory. So all of these guys essentially get split into one of those two camps, but they all do fit into one of those two camps. Black-Blighted Monsters from Stories 1. They are quite variant-y. Same with Frenzy Virus. Rage Raid Monsters from Stories 2. Yes, variant-y. EX Monsters from Stories 1. Enhanced with technology, but still that makes them variants. Oh, we've done it, guys. We've done it. And what we've essentially found out is that nearly every single category of monster, bar a couple that go into base monsters and subspecies, are just variations of variants. Variants of variants upon variants of variants, subdividing into many different categories to categorize why they've been varianted and given a new name. Which, as I said earlier on, is of course useful, but there is the proof. The simplification that every single monster in all of Monster Hunter across every single game is either a base monster, a variant, or a subspecies. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. It's been a pleasure. A pointless pleasure. I don't know what any of you got out of that. I really don't. I don't know what I got out of that. But I do know that we have now managed to get out of this. So... let me know what you thought. Genuinely, though, I do want your opinion on if there are too many categories, if it's a little bit too diluted. I mean, I guess in the main series, there's not too many. There is quite a definitive amount there. It's only when we go and add stuff like Frontier and such that it starts to get a bit crazy, but still, crazy it does indeed get. Honestly, I could totally go, ironically, for a new category of monster being added in the future, which would be really cool. Maybe Monster Hunter 6, something like a Deviants, another line of crazy monsters just for the fun of it, and that could be pretty well done. I don't know, I just feel like maybe it's time? Or hell, even something like Subspecies, which just become a staple, and every new generation of Monster Hunter adds more of them, more interesting ones, and it just continues with us. Whereas Deviants, it feels like they were kind of just a one-and-done gimmick. In any case, there you have it. Why did I do this? I honestly don't know. Like if you enjoyed this, subscribe for more. Please consider supporting the future of the channel and Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.